Russia sent 100 tanks worth $345 million roaring towards Zaporia, expecting to crush Ukraine's defenses in minutes. But what if I told you that Ukraine stopped them, not with superior numbers, but with $800 drones and a few lines of electronic code? This wasn't a battle of armor versus armor. It was mind versus machinery. And everything nearly fell apart because of a 10-second glitch that exposed the entire trap. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Russia's armored column didn't just roll forward. It was designed to end the war in one decisive push. But every perfect plan hides a blind spot. Operation Steel Avalanche, launched in September of 2025, was built on that belief. 100 tanks moved as a single machine, a $345 million rolling fortress meant to sweep through the fields of Zaporia and crack Ukraine's southern line wide open. Half the force was made up of the newest T-90M Pro Riv models, each one glittering with sensors, reactive armor, and a thermal sight array built to spot threats 2 kilometers away. They were backed by 30 T-80B VMS and 20 upgraded T-72B 3S, giving the column a layered mix of speed and brute endurance. Behind them came 40 infantry fighting vehicles and a handful of WarLineIntel drones circling high above to report every movement. On paper, this was the ultimate combined arms strike. Its mission was surgical: smash the defenders, reach Zaporia, and fracture the front before reinforcements could react. But the Ukrainians saw it forming days before the first tank engine turned over. Satellite images picked up the staging zones west of Tokmak. Signals intelligence traced the chatter of Russian officers discussing fuel logistics and ammunition flows. By the third day, field scouts from Ukraine's 14th Mechanized Brigade confirmed the exact route through the valley. Instead of stacking armor head-to-head, Ukrainian command built a defense designed to unbalance, not overpower. Their plan relied on disruption, an invisible wall rather than a concrete one. The 14th Brigade's positions were small, mobile, and connected through a digital web of drones and electronic warfare units. Their tanks, Oplots, T-72s, and a few aging T-64s were spread in depth, hidden under camouflage netting and tucked into shallow hollows. In the command shelter, the Book of a D system anchored everything. It was a network of jammers, sensors, and signal interceptors capable of turning the airwaves into a storm of interference. The goal wasn't just to block Russian comms. It was to make every screen, every optic, and every targeting feed unreliable. If the enemy couldn't see clearly, they couldn't hit accurately. While Russia depended on expensive thermal imagers and guided networks, Ukraine flooded the air with hundreds of disposable Sting Viper drones. Each one cost about as much as a laptop, yet carried an RPG-sized charge built to drop straight through an engine deck. Together, they formed a swarm that overloaded enemy systems simply through numbers. Russia's precision gave them strength, but it also gave them rigidity. Ukraine's chaos turned that strength back on itself. This was their method of weaponizing scale against thrust, trading polish for pressure, one cheap hit at a time. Once the Russians entered the valley, the fight began long before metal met metal. The first 20 minutes played out entirely across the electromagnetic spectrum. The WarLineIntel drone feeds began dissolving into static. Tank commanders shouted into radios that returned only bursts of white noise. Laser rangefinders flickered, thermal sights went black, and the armored column slowed to a cautious crawl. Drivers relied on periscopes alone, the horizon flickering with confusion as their network collapsed. The drones dove next, small dots darting between ridgelines, striking into rear supply trucks and communications relays. Flames shot up behind the main formation, cutting fuel and ammo lines before the lead tanks even fired. 2 T-72s halted, stalled by impacts to their optics. One commander reportedly tried to move his tank by guidance from a phone compass because every onboard system had gone dead. Viewers expected tank barrels and shockwaves, but the real combat was lightless and soundless, fought in signals and blind guesses. Ukraine's defense wasn't holding back the avalanche. It was bending it, making it stumble in invisible mud. Yet there was a weakness built into that brilliance. The jamming field consumed enormous power, every relay humming near overload. And when your entire defense depends on an electronic shield, what happens when that shield momentarily fails? Everything worked until it didn't. A power relay inside the Book of AD jamming network overheated, the field flickered, and for just a few breaths, Russia could finally see again. One Orlan-10 drone circling far above the valley regained its link and locked onto a thin line of heat on the ridge. 45 Ukrainian tanks and vehicles that were supposed to be invisible. The image streamed back instantly. Coordinates followed. Russian artillery crews several miles behind the line had a target again, and they moved fast. Within seconds, the air over the ridge began to tear apart. For days, that ridge had been the centerpiece of Ukraine's digital trap. The jamming grid and swarm drones worked together to herd the Russian armor into what officers called an ambush basin, a hollow shaped by the terrain and by deception. The plan was simple. Blind their sensors, push them forward, then strike from above and both flanks at once. Nothing flashy, just a mechanical sequence meant to collapse the column's structure completely. But now, with one burst of static giving way to clarity, the illusion cracked open. Russian gunners put 152mm shells onto the ridge in relentless waves. Dirt, smoke, and shrapnel swallowed the concealed tanks. Engines roared and radios sputtered as operators scrambled to restore lost connections. Major Ionenko, watching the feed from his command track, understood what that glimpse meant. His soldiers were supposed to wait until the Russian spearhead was deep inside the basin before firing. Waiting would guarantee the kill. But if he waited now, his men would be dead before the trap even closed. The jammers glowed red on monitors. Crew chiefs shouted over roaring shell impacts. The plan had seconds left to live. Ionenko saw the dust of approaching tanks on the far side of the valley, their optics still partly blinded, but their artillery now zeroed onto his own position. Either he launched early, or he lost everything. He made the call. All stations, this is Fist 1. Plan is compromised. Execute now for Ukraine. The ridge erupted as 20 T-84 oplots broke cover, engines bellowing black smoke. Behind them, T-72s and T-64s spread out on both sides, taking overwatch lanes. They moved while shells still fell, firing on the move, one round per target, never halting long enough for return fire. Ukrainian rounds smashed into the first row of Russian armor, trying to climb toward the high ground. Even as metal clashed and turrets rotated, the swarm returned. The surviving drones, having circled hostile airspace during the blackout, dove back in. The first wave struck the rearmost Russian vehicles, cutting escape routes. Then came the finishers. Each small quadcopter carried a shaped charge, attacking from above where tank armor was weakest. They didn't wipe out entire vehicles at once. They disabled them piece by piece. One drone cracked an engine deck. Another severed a thermal sight. A third plunged straight into an open hatch. Every second that passed tightened the knot inside that valley. Ionenko's tanks exploited that confusion. They shifted positions after every shot, left burned shells where sensors would misread them as active targets, and coordinated bursts of cannon and drone fire that left the Russian formation blind again. But this time from panic rather than jamming. Fireballs dotted the open fields. The sound of coordination vanished from Russian comms, replaced by fragments of half-finished orders. Crews began abandoning vehicles, some reversing into each other in smoke so thick their own spotters couldn't tell which tank belonged to which side. Ukraine's defense proved technology alone doesn't win wars. The victory depended on a commander's judgment, not on automated systems or perfect software. When the relay failed, Major Ionenko's decision to strike saved the brigade but cost 13 tanks and 40 soldiers. Those losses showed that machines may amplify strategy, yet they still answer to human instinct. In a war fought through sensors and code, that instinct became the one variable technology couldn't predict. So how much of modern warfare still depends on the split-second courage of one human? Maybe future victories will favor those who adapt fastest when systems collapse.